Restoration for Coast Region and sections of Nairobi is still ongoing, meaning that some people are still in the dark. So yes, that's a situation currently, but not to worry. 14 days to Christmas, how about that? Plus, in as far as the weather is concerned, let me just confirm for you, 25 degrees Celsius in Nairobi, those are the highs, lows of 17 degrees Celsius. Possibility of some showers today, 15%. So yes, you can expect some showers later on. But for now, do stand by for a big interview this morning. We'll be hosting the British ambassador to Kenya. And it's a big discussion as well as a focus on the youth, given that the Youth Connect Summit is coming to an end officially today. But the main theme for this year's Jamhuri Day celebrations is also focused on the youth. We'll be hosting a panel for that discussion as well. For now, let's take a look at the top stories. A new survey by Polytrack Africa has unveiled a list of members of parliament ranked based on approval ratings of their constituents. Westlands MP Tim Wanyonyi topped the list of MPs after getting an approval rating of 82.6%. However, Kenyans have expressed mixed reactions on the ratings. Chichi Josephine tells us more.
In the ranking, Westlands Member of Parliament Tim Wanyonyi led the team after getting an approval rating of 82.6%.
First position was a position that was shared, and it was shared between also the Westlands constituency Member of Parliament, that is Honorable Tim Wanyonyi, who also had an approval rating of 80.2% from the residents of Westlands constituency.
In a poll released on Friday, Wanyonyi was followed by Kiharu Member of Parliament Dindi Nyoro, Mavoko Member of Parliament Patrick Makau, and a tie between Embakasi Member of Parliament Babu Owino and Kimilili Member of Parliament Didmas Barasa with 78.6%, 78.5% and 78.3% respectively.
Second position, we had Embakasi East constituency Member of Parliament, that is Honorable Babu Owino, coming second with an approval rating of 79.6% from the residents of Embakasi East constituency. Also within the second position, we had Kimilili constituency Member of Parliament, that is Honorable Didmas Baraza, coming in second with an approval rating of 79.6% from the residents of Kimilili constituency. And leading the pack is Kiharu Member of Parliament, Honorable Dindi Nyoro, who was able to garner an approval rating of 80.2% from the residents of Kiharu constituency.
Following the listing of the Member of Parliament, residents from Keyo the constituency in Elgeyo Marakwet County appear to mirror the result of the survey, which rated their Member of Parliament Adams Kipsanai at number 9 in the country, with the residents sharing glowing plaudits on him over the service which they termed as diligent.
In the 9th position, it was secured by Keyo North constituency Member of Parliament, that is Honorable Adams Kipsanai, who was able to secure a rating of 76.1%.
Kuorodeshwa namba 9 ni pongezi sana kwa sababu kasi ya MB katika Keyo North inaonekana. Ukiona mambo ya wamama wa Keyo North wanang'ara sana kwa mambo ya empowerment.
The survey dubbed County Track was conducted between July to September 2023, covering all 47 counties, 290 constituencies and 1,450 wards, with an overall sample of 58,748.
We used the population of persons who are aged above 18 years, that is registered voters, and the sample size that was used in this study was 4,794 people.
Chichi Josephine, TV 47.
The National Health Insurance Fund, NHIF, has issued a notification to the public and employers announcing a mandatory shift in the payment method for services. However, Kenyans are reading more into the announcement, especially after the High Court halted the implementation of the new health acts. George Maringa interrogates.
Kenyans woke up to this statement on X, formerly Twitter, posted by NHIF on Sunday, signed by the Chief Executive Officer, CEO Elijah Washira. The agency has declared that henceforth, all payments must be exclusively processed through the government pay bill number 22222. The changes, effective immediately, mean that NHIF members intending to settle their contributions must input the pay bill number and utilize their NHIF MID number as their account number. In cases involving penalties, individuals should use their NHIF PID number when making payments. This adjustment aims to streamline and facilitate the payment process for NHIF services. The announcement was, however, met with a myriad of reactions as most users on the platform questioned the change of mode of payment. User after user commented, more so questioning what happens to those who had already paid for the month of December and the rest of 2025 through the old pay bill number. The change of pay bill also comes 2 weeks after the High Court halted the implementation of 3 held acts by the Minister of Health, pending the hearing and determination of a petition seeking to impede it. Justice Chacha Mwita issued conservatory orders halting the implementation, saying the petition pointed out important constitutional issues. The conservatory order restrains the respondents, their agents and/or anyone acting on their directives from implementing and/or enforcing the Social Health Insurance Act of 2023, the Primary Health Care Act 2023 and the Digital Health Act 2023 until February 7, 2024. With a pending court order and a government keen on improving the healthcare system and the latest announcement of the mode of payment, time will tell the direction that the healthcare conversation will take moving forward. George Maringa, TV47, Nairobi.
Youth Connect Africa Summit in Nairobi is shaping up to be a breeding ground for creativity and sharing of amazing ideas on entrepreneurship. Various stakeholders, among them Cabinet Secretary for Youth Affairs and Sports Ababu Namwamba, say Africa has all is required to develop without aid from Western countries. If African youth can turn their creativity into economic ventures. Mike Kagongo reports.
African governments have been urged to create a conducive environment for youth to thrive economically, with Africa being known for having majority of people aged between 18 to 35 years in the world.
Because it's true, actually majority of youth don't have access to social media.
Okay.
So we need talent scouts on the ground.
That's 60 years since independence, since political independence. Africans are still talking, I'm Francophone, I am Anglophone. Don't you really feel ashamed of that? Isn't it shameful that we are still being described by our colonial masters?
As the Youth Connect Africa Summit entered its second day at the Kenyatta International Convention Center, KICC, Nairobi, various stakeholders challenged youth to be part of social and economic transformation towards a better tomorrow.
Ababu requested.
Youth Affairs and Sports Cabinet Secretary Ababu Namwamba affirmed Africa has enough resources to develop and to thrive without depending on financial aid from Western countries.
Why can't Youth Connect come up with a Creatives Award program which will reward the best upcoming African artists every year at every Youth Connect Summit?
Reality is that a lot of African producers, whether you go to sell your content on Netflix or Amazon, once you are black, they just remove 1 0. And you understand that somebody producing from Europe or US will get something better. So we have to come like black in inside and white outside to get a good deal.
If we work together, everybody's benefit. We're all going to win as Africa.
We are all giants, especially as the youth. We are giants in a way we can never understand. And that gives us a bunch of responsibilities that we have to carry this continent on our backs.
The summit has also provided a ready market for small-scale traders in the capital. The summit, the 6th in history, is being held under 7 key principles, which include sustainable development, digital economy and climate change, among others. Now, apart from connecting, interacting, and perhaps exchanging new ideas from different African backgrounds, these young entrepreneurs also got a chance to make money from the small businesses, making good use of this chance of 2023 African Youth Summit here in Nairobi. Mike Kagwango, TV 47 from KICC, Nairobi.
Now, preparations for the 60th Jamhuri Day celebrations are in top gear, with Principal Secretary for Interior Raymond Omolo giving an all-systems go for this year's celebrations to be held at Uhuru Gardens in Nairobi. During an inspection tour of the venue yesterday, PS Omolo stated that the preparations ahead of the day are complete, with the final touches expected to be done today. Kenyans have been called upon to turn up for the national celebrations, with 30,000 people expected at the grounds, and at least three heads of state are expected to jet in for the celebrations.
All meals sorted.
Cognizance of the role that the youth play in building this nation, and we participate in activities that would empower, embolden, and make the youths to be the real source of hope for the next generation in this country. We expect that the celebrations are going to be rolled out in other parts of the country, across all the counties, the sub-counties, and the divisions. And for those who will not be able to make it to Uhuru Gardens on Tuesday, we advise that they celebrate with us in their respective locations. We have made adequate security arrangements, and starting today until after the celebrations on the 12th, these grounds will be covered by our brothers from KDF as well as the National Police Service for purposes of ensuring that we have a successful event. Of course, the security deployment is in place for the rest of the city as well as the country. Then lastly, is that we are looking forward to also have the finals of the Talanta Hela football tournament that has been going on, which will happen at Nyayo Stadium on the 12th in the afternoon.
All right, and those are our top stories this morning. A quick reminder of the big interview later this morning. British High Commissioner to Kenya, His Excellency Neil Wigan, will be in studio. Do stand by for that. For now, let's take a look at the day's news diary.
Well, and our diary this morning, we can start with the Youth Connect Africa Summit, which enters day 4 today, and the last day with discussions on dignified work for the youth in Africa, youth in peace and security, and navigating technology and innovation expected to take place, as well as the closing ceremony for that summit. Away from that, the Principal Secretary for Internal Security and National Administration will lead the national celebrations steering committee in supervising the ongoing preparations for this year's 60th Jamhuri Day celebrations in the county at Uhuru Gardens, a national monument, ahead of the celebrations tomorrow. Elsewhere, the 13th East African Community Interparliamentary Games are started on 8th all the way to 18th of December 2023, and that is in partnership with the East African Legislation Assembly, IALA. The Parliament of Rwanda hosts the 13th Parliamentary Games under the theme for progressive, peaceful, and all-inclusive EAC. And the games are taking place in Kigali City and Bugesera District. These are the next 1 week. Elsewhere, it is the UNICEF Day for Change, and this day has UNICEF has been working all over the world for over 75 years to aid, protect, advocate for, and provide resources for children in need, whether affected by food shortages, lack of water and sanitation facilities, improper nutrition, lack of medical care, or inadequate educational opportunities. UNICEF is dedicated to helping children who are at risk. And that's the news diary. Of course, we keep on updating you as we move on with the show. Time now to have a look at the dailies.
All right, let's take a look at the Standard this morning. Treasury claims it's broke. Experts say it's all about wastage luxury. Poor planning, while government says it does not have money to pay salaries or the CDF. Reports indicate it is spending on luxury trips and hospitality has gone up by up to 30%, with analysts saying much needed money is being diverted to things that can be avoided. That's a top story on the Standard this morning. The other story given prominence, cast of founding fathers. Madhu's dark secrets come to light. In spite of being one of the best educated Kenyans at independence, Eliud Madhu did not take many of his children to university. That's a special report on page 2. Other highlights on the front page, conservators in big battle for Laikipia Plains. And elsewhere, counties run on empty, warn of service collapse. These are the big highlights on the front page. And of course, on the health and science pullout, I got a stroke while eating supper with my family. On the top strip of the Standard, interesting things Kenyans search for in Google. And this is a very interesting story because I've looked at it, and Millicent Omanga is actually the top trending local personality, the most searched local personality in Kenya today on Google. Pardon me. On the international scene, disquiet as CC seeks a third term. In business, coffee wars persist, a new team picked. And in sports, fingers crossed as athletes await top awards. So let's flip and take a look at what is the big sports headline on the Standard. On the back page, South African bell sounds early warning in Classic Rally. Classic Rally Day 1 of East Africa offers great stories. The speedsters covered 3 stages on the day, covering over 358 kilometers. And yes, Kenya Highland Seed headed for Ndume Trophy, and that is in polo. Those are the big stories on the Standard today.
Well, let's have a look at the Daily Nation. The top headline there, Raila under siege, and Azimio leader Raila Odinga is a man under pressure. Some of his coalition allies have refused to support his decision to endorse the BAMBA talks report over its failure to include ways of cutting taxes to bring down the cost of living, and that is a story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation. Just some opinions there. The former President Uhuru Kenyatta, the Azimio Council chairman, is said to be opposed to the report, as well as NAC Kenya party leader Martha Karua says the BAMBA stocks report should be rejected in totality. And the DAPK leader Eugene Wamalwa as well, who was a member of the talks team, has opposed the report. And yes, on the top strip of the Daily Nation, inside President's ambitious project to raise 1.5 trillion shillings through e-citizen, and that is a story on page 7 of the Daily Nation. On matters floods, trapped in floods, and nation staffer tells of Lamu ordeal after they were left stranded. That story is on page 9 of the Daily Nation. Other stories on the Daily Nation, on the lower strip, a new push to make male circumcision mandatory free. And a draft bill to be tabled in the National Assembly seeks to make male circumcision mandatory, but under the supervision of a trained medical personnel. The Free Mandatory Medical Circumcision Draft Bill 2023, which has been fronted by Mukurweini MP John Kagusha, notes that the move will significantly reduce the prevalence of sexually transmitted diseases, including HIV and AIDS. In matters COP28, activists decry slow progress at Forum, and a caucus of the civil society groups attending the 28th Conference of Parties COP28 is decrying the slow progress as the summit draws to a close. Other matters, their global shipping line opt for Mombasa on efficiency. Yes, that is the front page of the Daily Nation. Looking at what we have on the back page, Pochettino wants a blue back to transfer market after loss. And yes, that is on sports. Away from that, Kenya puts 3 in main draw of a tuni at current club. That's a Daily Nation this morning.
Tuangazie gazeti la Taifa Leo. Habari kuu pale, Ruto aotea trilioni 1.5. Wataalamu wasema huduma za serikali kupitia eCitizen zitakusanya fedha hizo kwa mwaka. Iwapo maazimio haya yatatimia, wataalamu wa eCitizen wasema serikali itajiongezea mapato juu ya yale ya sasa na hivyo kupunguza utegemezi wa Kenya kwa mikopo ya kigeni. Habari kamili kwenye ukurasa wa pili. Vidokezo vingine kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, Wamasai wazidi kukumbatia upangaji uzazi. Kwingineko, mkuu wa KPA na Njeri kuhojiwa. Habari zaidi, umoja wa kisiasa mashariki waanza kunukia. Na pale juu kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Taifa Leo, Murkomen sasa atishia kumstaki Cherargei. Kwa masuala ya spoti, ni wikendi ya vichapo kwa wazito ligi ya EPL. Chelsea, Man United pamoja na Arsenal warambwa. Habari zenyewe kwenye ukurasa wa 20 wa 20. Yeah, watu walirambwa.
We were just celebrating my news loss only for us. So have a look at the People Daily this morning, and the headline there similar to what we have on the Daily Nation. Raila dilemma on talks report. Other stories on the top strip of the People Daily. State spending on travel rises to 4 billion shillings. That story there is on page 7 of the People Daily. Other stories on the left strip of the People Daily. Men to adopt children if new bill sails through. And away from that, a security beefed up ahead of the Jamhuri Day. That's the People Daily this morning.
Let's take a look at the Business Daily. On the Business Daily, middle class turn to salary advances as economy bites. Cooperative Bank triples salary advances to 51.7 billion shillings. Banks are charging up to 60% interest on short-term loans. Interesting. The other big story on the front page of the Business Daily, excise taxes hit on reduced beer cigarette consumption. That's the irony. It is the season for sherehe, and we are talking about reduced beer consumption. On the ticker, cooking gas prices rise to levels before VAT removal. Elsewhere, bulk of farms yet to adopt ESG reporting. And finally, 518 billion shilling paper losses dampen sale of state farms. And those are the highlights on the front page of the Business Daily today.
Well, on the Star, the top headline there, Ruto defense 48 trips, 360 million shillings spent so far. And the president says his travel aimed at securing jobs for unemployed youth. Yes, away from that opposition, the opposition has accused the president of globetrotting when country is in economic mess, and that is the story on page 4 to 5 of the Star this morning. Away from that, on the top strip there, Rumba maestro Kofi Olomide thrills fans at Peace concert. That is the story on page 19 there of the Star this morning. Looking at what we have on the lower strip of the Star this morning, heavy rains to return to many places this week as Met forecast shows. On matters education, scandal claims rock ministry over delayed delivery of textbooks. And stalled projects, report shows contractors in Northeastern lack capacity. That's the Star this morning.
Okay, let's cross the border now and take a look at the headlines from our neighboring countries. We start off with Uganda. The Daily Monitor, the big headline, military police named in crime. Criminals in uniform, they say. Investigators cite senior army and police officers in masterminding racketeering and gold scams in the city and countryside, accusing the perpetrators of using the power of their offices and guns to intimidate detectives and frame unsuspecting victims as criminals. It's a special report on pages 4 and 5 of the Daily Monitor in Uganda today. A big photo there on the throne, Bishop Banja takes over reins at Namirembe. And on the very bottom of the Daily Monitor, what DR Congo election means and what you need to know about it. And those are just some of the highlights on the front page of the Daily Monitor this morning. Big news in Uganda.
Well, let's cross over to Tanzania, and the top headline there on the Citizen: why 1.38 trillion shillings cement project has yet to take off. And yes, the on and off are planned by a Chinese firm to set up a multi-million-dollar cement manufacturing plant in Tanga is still on, according to TIC, which has attributed the delay to investors' request for additional incentives. Other stories on the Citizen: Mpango reappears, hits out at Malaysia's falsehoods, and the Vice President Philip Mpango yesterday appeared in public for the first time after nearly 6 weeks and immediately castigated those behind false information about his health. Away from that, the right strip: Samia issues directives on El Nino rains, and World Bank VP confident on poverty reduction. That's a Citizen in Tanzania this morning.
Tusalie kule Tanzania na tuangazie jarida la Mwananchi na habari kuu pale kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi: Mpango azua mjadala, aeleza alivyokuwa na kazi maalum nje ya nchi, akemea taarifa za mitandao juu yake. Wadau wa habari wasema kusingekuwa na uzushi iwapo taarifa zingetolewa mapema. Habari zingine kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi: askari polisi bado walia na kikokotoo. Kwingineko, maambukizi ya uviko 19 yaongezeka. I didn't know they had a term for COVID-19. Uviko 19 yaongezeka. Wale wa Tanzania watatuonyesha mambo. Kwingineko, Daktari Salmin alifuta pasipoti kwa wabara. Na habari zaidi: shahidi asema marehemu Msuya alivutwa na biashara ya madini. Hizi ndizo habari zilizopewa kipaumbele kwenye ukurasa wa mbele wa Mwananchi kule Tanzania. Na hapo ndio tunahitimisha masuala ya magazeti.
Naam, tuangazie masuala ya karakacha katika gazeti la Standard ukurasa wa 12, katika gazeti la Daily Nation ukurasa wa 10, na gazeti la People Daily ukurasa wa 10 pia. Tuanze na gazeti la Daily Nation. A very interesting cartoon here this morning. It's relating to the Youth Connect Africa Summit that is ongoing. And ironically, the people who are saying we urge the youth to take leadership in all spheres are very aged people sitting on those seats for just tells a clear picture of the Kenyan politics. Yeah, we are all championing for youth leadership, while there are people who have been there and they're still there and they don't want to get up of those seats. And you see even some appointments of very old people, even as we champion for youth leadership, which doesn't make sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The cartoon on the Standard speaks about a different summit, and that's the COP28 summit that was happening in Dubai. And the kind of different sentiments expressed there. And the speaker there asks, when should we phase out fossil fuel? And different people giving different timelines. From 2030, others saying now, 2045, 2025, and others saying 3030. 3030 should be like 1,000 years from now. And there's one interesting one with an American flag saying, drill, baby, drill. Oh yeah, so
COP outcomes auction.
COP outcomes auction. Yeah. And those are the cartoon. That's a cartoon on the Standard today. I don't know if we have the People Daily.
We have the People Daily there on page 10 of the People Daily, and Stano there focuses on, yes, if Joseph and Mary lived in Kenya. And Joseph there is telling Mary, Mary, we are in deep trouble. And on the way to Bethlehem, there's a government notice there that shows must have a license to own an animal. Cost of marriage certificate has gone up. You must pay for birth certificate. Free maternity is not that free. NHIF is currently available. Just depicts the picture of how everything is and anything is being taxed in the country right now.
And I think Stano always has a way of capturing creativity, because I think this is what captures the real situation in Kenya today. The rest are talking about summits, just the usual happenings day in, day out. But this one captures the real situation and just juxtaposing and drawing a parallel with the Christmas theme.
Yes.
14 days to Christmas. Interesting.
Yes.
Stano, once again, does it. Yes, and that's the news review this morning. Just a reminder of that big interview with the British High Commissioner to Kenya, Neil Wigan, later on this morning. Do stand by for that. Before that, we're going to be having a different discussion on focusing on the youth. A panel comprising Kimone Kimone, Director KNCCI, Kuna Njima Castro, Nelly Chepkemoi, and Mundalo Advice will be in studio for this discussion. Do stand by for this and a lot more. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV47. Right, welcome back. You're watching Morning Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indimuli. We now want to focus on the youth. The Youth Connect Africa Summit comes to an end today officially, but some activities will extend tomorrow and join up with what will be happening as Kenya marks 60 years of independence. Over 20,000 delegates have converged in Nairobi to discuss matters youth and entrepreneurship, and that's our main focus today in this discussion. We're privileged to have in studio this morning Rakuna Njima Castro. He is a political and security intelligence analyst. Good to have you in studio. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Fred, for having me this morning.
Yes. Alongside Bwana Castro is Kimone, Director, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much, Indimuli, for having me here.
Yes, and I want us to start off, even as we focus on the youth and the Youth Connect Summit, there's this cartoon on the Daily Nation today.
Yeah.
And it talks about some not so youthful gentlemen there urging the youth to take leadership in all spheres. And is this the kind of disconnect, let's start from there, is this the kind of disconnect that we see today? That those people at the table who are making decisions and even making decisions about the youth in Kenya are clearly not youthful? Castro.
Yeah, that's true. It is a disconnect. And actually, from the cartoon that we are seeing here today, it's actually very contradicting and very funny, because the men who are asking the young people to take up the leadership, actually they are very old for even be able to get us where we are as young people, because young people are very innovative. And of course, taking up this leadership mantle needs young people to be on the table. And being on the table, it's having an open space for them to discuss with them, and having the young people, of course, trying to make up these policies, formulate these policies, that they should include their fellow young peoples in leadership, but of course also in business and enterprises. And young people, of course, coming onto the table now requires them, okay, to come up with the viable and feasible policies that will bring them here on the table. And them are being included in the high tables and tables of making not only national policies, also international policies. It's by involving them in various institutions and various policy making departments, so that they can be able, of course, to enhance their innovations. They can enhance their, of course, aspirations on how to take up the national agenda and how to take up the international agenda to another level. So it's very clear that we have a disconnect between generations. We have the older generations and younger generations, and of course, involving younger generation needs, of course, for the elder generations to give up space, and of course to agree that time has come for also young people to be able to be brought near the leadership space, so that they can participate in nation and international building.
But Kimone, there are those who argue that nothing is given on a silver platter. Power is taken.
Yeah.
And we are staring at a generation of Kenyan youth who appear a bit reluctant to pursue what they want. They are waiting for it to be given to them.
Yeah.
So we could be blaming this older generation wrongly, don't you think? That probably our youth are to be blamed for failure to occupy these positions.
I in part agree and in part disagree, because when I look at the Youth Connect Summit, I was asking myself, is the youth supposed to connect to the old age, or are the old trying to connect with the youth? Because that is where we see the disconnect, so to speak. Because in the leadership position that they are telling us, the old, unless they are speaking about the leadership in front of their cars, because it is the youth they employ as their chauffeurs, then when it comes to leadership positions, they are not even giving these youths the positions. But now I want to come to the youth and speak to them. Do not focus on what the old are doing. Leadership positions are taken. Even the Bible, for those who believe in the Bible, says that even the kingdom of heaven suffers violence. So it is now for us to connect amongst one another as the youths and take up these positions. We cannot keep being used by them. And I used to challenge the youths, even when we are going to campaigns, when we are electing these leaders, they are using you in their social media. You are the ones handling, you are the one putting the posters up, you are the one who is even insulting other candidates. But where are you? in the entire formula. Where are you? It is now the youth to know no one cares for them. Unless we care for each other, if I do not support Castro, if he doesn't support me, this old generation will only keep on telling you, come and take it. What they are saying without saying is, come and take it, come fight me, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, Castro, if we may go back to our history, and the many people, especially in the agitation even for multi-party democracy, it is a younger generation who are the forefront, university students, university student leaders. I don't know if you've seen any of the dailies, that kind of agitation from our university students. Of course, there's the issue of change in laws here and there. But laws were there, even during that agitation for multi-party democracy. We are seeing a general reluctance of youth failing to come out and pursue issues that are of interest to them.
That's exactly what has happened, because also time have changed. And unlike there before, when young people, they had that political motivation, and young people, actually, they were coming up to take up these mantles. And of course, today, the way you are putting it, that it's that reluctant. But the reluctant is coming because there is that disconnect, and then there is the state frustrations. The young people, of course, they have expectations, they have aspirations, but these aspirations, they're not matching with whatever the state is offering for them. Then it becomes so hard for young people now to be able to realize whatever dream they have and whatever dream the nations have. Because when it comes to defending of a democracy, it is young people that defended the democracy of this nation. It is that young people and the boldness of young people that brought up the multi-party democracy. So this student leadership was very vibrant, and of course it was very active, that it didn't oppose the sitting government, unlike of today, because these institutions and student unions, they are not such active as they were back then. Because I remember I was a student leader at Catholic University. That's when now we started, of course, realizing that there is some disconnect, there is some weakness in student leadership, because even the management itself and the university managements and the government, and of course also elected political leaders, they are frustrating the student leadership. So that disconnect has become. And of course, when we are talking of young people also taking and grabbing this leadership, there is a very minute space, very minute chance for a young person to try and grab this leadership, not even in the electoral space, because in 2027, I have experience of, I ran for MP in Odaya constituency, so I have an experience to know even the young people realizing in the
2022 or 2020?
Oh, 2020.
You've already said
maybe in 2027. Maybe 2027 I'll still be there. Maybe. But in 2022, I ran at Odaya for Member of Parliament. But even for young people realizing with their aspiration of another young person, it becomes hard unless you are very monetized, because everything in this country now has become very monetized, especially when it comes to politics. And of course, you know, in Kenya we are playing a politics of course, we're trying to realization, and you get to call yourself a young people. Even the old elders here who are in the cartoon, they will come and their
hearts are still pumping.
Yeah, of course, they tell the young people. You see, as young people,
these are the same people who back in the day were younger people.
Yeah, sure.
Because you see the likes of James Orengo, Young Nyong'o, these were the people on the forefront.
Exactly.
And they were young back then. They may be wondering, why should we cede ground to people who appear least interested in this?
No, people are not, young people, they are not least interested, by the way. So many young people who have come up, exactly of my generation and generation Kamone. We are very people who have become very bold and who want us to take our country forward, divide of our personal interests. So number one is the patriotism of a young person to take the country forward. And that's whatever the zeal and the aspiration of every young Kenyan that is coming. But whatever is disinteresting the young person is the disconnect and the state frustration. That the state and of course this young person is on his own. There's nobody who is taking up or actually taking up his challenge to another step. You know, But by that time, if you look at the history, then we are having those people who became now who are leaders. By then, they were youth leaders. Then they had their godfathers, the people who held their hand high, and of course they supported them in every step that they made. And of course now today we are not seeing such kind of trying to make up
that mentorship.
Yeah, that mentorship.
Is it the lack of mentorship, or because Castro also mentioned an issue of resources? That in these ventures, if you're not properly bankrolled, yes, you may not get anywhere.
There's one thing that I will say in Jamhuri. When the priority of the nation does not focus on the next generation, but on the next election, then you lose the patriotism. What the youth now have lost is faith and belief in their own nation. Because the priorities by the leaders that we put in place are not focused on the next generation, but on the next election. How will I win the next election? When you see the use of, and I respect, he is my friend, James Orengo. Yes. And Professor Anyang' Nyong'o, they were vibrant, they were good leaders, they knew what they wanted, because the nation by then, even the leaders who are there, they knew that whatever we want to have in this nation is a better place for our children. Right now, even those who are in leadership positions, whatever they are focused on is a better place for me. Not for my children. It is a better place for me. How do I make business? How do I get all these tenders? So this has disinterested the youth, and they have taken them away from the patriotism of the nation. And that is why most of the youth are focusing on money. And the moment we change our politics into handout politics, not policies, but money, handouts, the youth are looking for money.
So you agree that this pursuit for money has distracted Kenyan youth from actually pursuing power? Yes. Or pursuing their own interests elsewhere. It's just about money. And allow me now to welcome to the panel Nelly Chepkemoi. She is a politician and the national youth leader. Nelly, we've had these conversations many times before on this panel about the disinterest that exists in Kenyan youth. And you see that cartoon on the Daily Nation today about the ongoing Youth Connect Summit. And we seem to be having the older generation
telling us to connect to them.
No, I think they should be
to take leadership in all spheres. And
it is the youth,
we are saying probably it is the youth who are to blame. And the question is it the older generation to be blamed for not accepting or ceding ground to the youth, or should we blame the youth for being too reluctant to pursue and take over these positions?
I don't think we should blame the youth, because, I mean, we are youth, we've taken up those spaces before. We are still taking up the same spaces, trying to fight for the youth out here. For me, I think I would blame it on the system. That is the people who've been before us, so the older generation. Because when you see a group, or rather a cadre of leaders who are youth trying to come up, we still have the older generation that is still at some point trying to have some barrier preventing these youths, because you find even in our political parties, which I normally say that forms the basis of our elections, of our politics in Kenya, you find that there are barriers really in the political parties that prevent youth from rising to the top leadership. So as much as we are talking about the politics outside here, we must also start talking about the politics in the political parties, which should be avenues actually that are really there to enhance and bring out the youth now, to elevate them to the national stage.
Yes.
So I think I would blame it on the older generation.
Interestingly, this is happening as Kenya marks 60 years.
Yeah.
And if you go back to the formative years of this republic, there are very many youthful leaders, the likes of Tom Mboya, who were very high in government, Mwai Kibaki, J.M. Kariuki. And these young leaders worked with the older generation of the founding father, Jomo Kenyatta, and others. People like the former Attorney General, Charles Njonjo. They were very young people during that. What changed? 60 years later, it would appear we should have improved Castro to a huge extent in as far as integrating the youth into our politics. But we are seeing that we are regressing.
Yeah, true, we are regressing. But you know why? Because so many people now, they think that when you get to politics and leadership, when you're taking these mantles or you're taking high office, then it's time to create wealth instead of building up a nation. That's why you're seeing so many older generations, they are getting stuck onto those offices because, of course, they are creating so much money. And instead of now trying to live up this leadership to another generation, because of course every generation it has its role, and then when your generation comes and leads, then another generation will come and take up the mantle. But there is that disconnect. There is no that generational change that happens here, because those who started this leadership, they want to stuck there because a lot of money then is being made in these offices. So that disconnect, then it makes them not to allow any young person to get near these. Of course, these are, they are honeypots, their own honeypots. So the young people, they not get near these offices. And this, of course, also it is as my friend said here, that even the political parties, they have policies that actually discourage young people from even getting a space in this political leadership.
But how does the Kenyan youth get out of this? Because fine, it is okay to lament, or times are tough, political parties are not helping us, the older generation is sitting on us. Then how do you get out? It is
true, Ndimule, and I want to appreciate what my sister has said, but in the same breath, say that even if we do not want to blame the youth, we are to blame in one factor here. We have already known they do not welcome us, but we are still clinging on their quotes that we want to join them. We know they will not do it. As she said, in the political parties, you will find they even have a youth league to entice you, to bring you
on the side.
Yes, it is. And when they are discussing, you are on the others. It is when you're writing the minutes, there is an AOB. For youth in these political parties, is an AOB. I want to challenge the youth, where is your political party? Because they all have their political party. And they use you to mobilize. So they know that 60% of the people who will even attend political party rallies and meetings are youths. So why don't we have our own political party to bring them on board? There's a law that allows 30% of tenders to go to the youths. Now tell me, Ndimuli, how factual or how relevant it is, how fair it is for a youth ministry, like for example now we have Ababu Namwamba. How do you tell me this ministry is supposed to focus on the youth, but they can only get 30%? It's like telling you in your own house you can only stay in the kitchen, you cannot access any other room. The youth are supposed to have 100% of the tenders in that ministry. It is theirs anyway.
Yes.
But when you look at the system, as my sister said, they have choreographed it in a manner, it favors them. So it is the high time for the youth start owning their own political parties, focusing on their ideas, because whatever the older generation used to experience, we are not experiencing that. And they cannot connect. That we should be having this youth summit, connect, it should be old disconnect.
And as we wrap up this conversation on the connect, the generational gap, talking about political parties, because we've seen, and we had this discussion leading up to December, when we had been promised that the UDA was going to have grassroots elections, and we were looking at it as something promising, especially for the youth and women to a huge extent, that this is an opportunity for them to actually vie for positions, elective positions, not appointive, not piecemeal appointments, but elective positions in political parties. That did not happen. Do you think, because it was going to happen December 9th, actually this past weekend, do you feel that this will ever happen, that these parties will open up their spaces to the youth to democratically pursue some of these positions?
I think it's a matter of time, but I wouldn't really be sure of it, because we've seen it happen before, and you can almost be sure that it can happen again. So I think I agree with what my brother says here, and it is high time the youth of this nation need to wake up. It is high time the youth, this is why I always say, like, you can never run away from politics. So if you ask me a solution to this, or rather how to close this gap, I think the youth of this nation need to, one, as he said, form our own political party. Number two, form lobby groups. It doesn't hurt. This is how the cartels we normally hear about out here started. They started by forming lobby groups. I don't see any problem when the youth also come together to form their own lobby groups. This will be like their own cartel of the youth. I think once the youth come together and just decide to sponsor and fund candidates who have the emotional intelligence and the people's interest at heart, then they can move ahead. Because when you look at this generation or the population in Kenya, we are normally told, or it is even out there when you check the census report, that the youth are the majority who make up this country. So I think when we do this as the youth, we'll be able to have representatives, because I really believe in the power of youth, and I believe that we can offer an alternative leadership.
Okay. Yeah. Before even we leave that stage, I want to agree with what we're saying. But with the lobby groups, we must tell the youth that they will be fought. Mm-hmm. They will be fought. We saw the other day when the young people, the young men from Mount Kenya were coming up, the people who are calling them Mungiki are not the youths themselves. They are the leaders in position, because they have realized. We used to have National Youth Council. The older generation killed it because they saw they are coming to take up. When you say that there were elections that were supposed to happen for UDA, when they realized the lineup from bottom to up are youths below 35 years, they canceled the elections. They saw danger coming. That is why the elections never happened. If the old only, why? They will happen.
Wow. Interesting conversations. This morning we are focusing on the youth, even as a Youth Connect Africa Summit comes to an end today, with some of the activities overlapping into tomorrow as we mark Jamhuri Day, 60 years of independence for this country. When we come back, we'll be talking about more on what is being discussed at the Youth Connect Summit, including some Pan-Africanist approaches to entrepreneurship. That after the break. You're watching Morning Cafe. Cafe on TV 47 with me, Fred Indemuli. This morning we're focusing on the youth, and with me on the panel today we have Gakuna Njima Castro, political and security intelligence analyst, Nelly Chepkemoi, politician and national youth leader, and Kimone, director, Kenya National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at some of the thematic areas that are being caucused on, especially at the Youth Connect Summit, there's a very interesting, in fact, the theme of the summit is, let me get it correct, it's something reawakening the African Renaissance. Youth innovating a borderless African Renaissance. And we're more and more seeing this Pan-Africanist approach in a lot of the discussions we're having politically, that we should not just look within, we need to look beyond, even beyond our continent, to people who are like-minded. But there's a challenge. Because Castro, if at all we've just been talking about the reluctance of Kenyan youth to even take up positions within our borders, so how do we expect that they will even entertain conversations about a borderless approach to anything?
You know, approaching, you know, when looking at a borderless Africa and having a debate around young people participating in building a borderless Africa, then of course, there is a lot of issues that, of course, it will come on board, and more challenges. That's on the more challenges that will be experienced. Number one, as you say, it's the reluctance of the young people to actually participate in building this borderless Africa, and then we have a sabotage from other quarters, international and nationally, from within our states in Africa and international, because we are looking at nations, African nations that have been colonized and still serving colonial masters, because we are being referred to as, like here in East Africa, Anglophones, and then we have a Francophone in the west part of Africa. And you know, serving these colonial masters, then there are policies that get they get forced onto African states, and then these policies discourages such conversation, that we cannot build such conversation around borderless Africa and having borderless Africa, because looking at even the East African Confederation that is being built up, and they are trying to come up with a confederation, a federation of the East African states, and having one state, and then that is, of course, it's a state within a state, and has its own forces, having its own human capital that is very skilled, and of course even having its own forces. And then it becomes hard because there are some quotas from the West and of course from the global North that doesn't want this to exist. So for a young person not to participate in such a debate when the government of the state's government, individual states government is getting intimidated and have no space and chance to actualize such a dream, then it's become very hard for a country or a confederation to be formed.
Yet there must be an opportunity, because we're talking about innovating. And when it comes to innovation, there are opportunities that this older generation may not really have a good grasp on, especially matters technology in the digital world. The conversations online, when you see, especially on X, there's a lot of exchange between Kenya and Kenyans and other nations, mostly when you're just sparring with them. And the wars, the Twitter wars, the famous Twitter wars, GOtv versus Nigeria, GOtv versus Uganda. So the discussion is already there. The connection is already there. It is already. But we are yet to develop that kind of connection to spur entrepreneurship. Despite the issues that you talk about, the obvious physical borders that we see, the obvious reluctance by this older generation to give room, but the discussions are already there. Don't you think that that's an opportunity that the youth in Africa, on this continent, I'm not just talking about Kenyans, should take advantage of?
I believe by now, anyone who believes there are still borders is long lost, because we already have a borderless globe. Because with the internet, you do not have to move from Nairobi to anywhere. So when we are speaking about the unity and the borderless Africa, we are supposed to be speaking business opportunities, policies. You formulate policies that makes me, when I go to Nigeria, when I go to Morocco, when I go to any other African country, I can do business the way I can do it in Kenya. We open up opportunities for our youth in every African nation, and we disintegrate ourselves from the colonial mentality that, because I always tell people, if you have the colonial master mentality in a sovereign nation, you are worse than a slave. Because what you're supposed to do with your internet, if I can sell or buy, order goods from any other country to Kenya, to where I am, to my doorstep actually, then it is already borderless. So what we are supposed to be doing is unify policies that enable business in the African continent to be as seamless. So that when you go to Uganda, when you go to Tanzania, when you go to Rwanda, you can be able to do business as easy as you can do it in your country. But now you look at the system of the governments that we have. It is the governments to disintegrate the system that makes Kenya block Uganda, block Tanzania when it comes to doing business. And maybe the people who had the thoughts of having one currency, which is now fought by the West, and that is why they killed Gaddafi. It was not because of anything. It is because of that unity
and that's
currency.
the kind of discussion we should be having now, Nelly,
Yes.
that probably, because technology offers opportunities. Physically, it may not be possible to have a unified currency that easy. There are obvious disparities, even in literacy levels, even in physical borders. But surely, in the internet sphere, with things like cryptocurrency and all these other discussions, don't you think that there's an opportunity to actually fast-track this issue of a common African currency, if at all we're talking about innovating borderless African renaissance? Nelly?
I think there's opportunity in that because, as he says, there's already that borderless connection already. So what we just need to do is reduce the gaps that are there that are preventing the smooth connection or the smooth borderless. And I'm really happy that within the summit, there was the discussion of borderless commerce, and you're bringing up the cryptocurrency. It's something we should really be looking into. But I have an issue now when it comes to the policies as well. You find a country like Kenya is really committed towards this. But again, the kind of policies and measures being put into place by the government of the day will really not create that enabling environment for Kenyans or Kenyan youth to thrive when it comes to the kind of connection we are talking about the borderless connection. So I think for us as Africans or other African nations, we should look into reducing the gaps that are there because we have the opportunity. It is just a matter of reducing the gap and also creating an enabling environment where people can do business seamlessly, because you cannot tell me we have a borderless commerce type of business forum and then you're bringing about something like the 15% withholding tax for a youth. So you're saying you want to empower the economy, or rather the digital economy, but you're suppressing the same digital economy when you bring about over-taxation with it. So those are the gaps that I'm speaking about. Lower the taxes, create an enabling environment, and everything will work out.
Yes. So there's still that issue of policy that she brings up. And allow me to welcome Mundalo Advice, National Youth Chairman, Jubilee Party. Karibu sana. Today we're focusing on the youth, as we often do. But we are connecting it with what's happening at the Youth Connect Africa Summit and this Pan-Africanist approach to entrepreneurship in the face of glaring disparities in literacy levels, policies as well, and yes, of course, the physical borders that we have. But we're just talking about the opportunities that exist beyond these limitations, that with the internet and digital and technology spheres, there's a lot more that youth in Africa can do. We're talking about a population of about 400 million. That's 70% of the entire population on this continent.
Yeah, first of all, good morning, and good morning to my colleagues.
Good morning, good morning. You're welcome.
I think the first disappointment I have this morning is that even as the close of Youth Connect, there is no youth headline, despite the fact that we have actually had a youth conversation. That shows you the seriousness with which youth matters are taken. Yeah, youth matters are not taken very seriously.
Maybe they're trying to tell us we never hit the headlines.
I'm wondering because even
headlines are taken.
Even the headlines are taken.
They're not given.
Yeah, even with the Youth Connect, we haven't. So I wonder at what point the youth of this country are going to make headlines. Because we can't only make headlines during demonstrations.
Yeah.
And when we die. We should make headlines, at least for this time when there is a conversation about youth matters. I have a lot of reservation about how the entire Youth Connect has been handled in its execution. But I want to agree with the reality that for among the first times, we are actually having people of the caliber of the president starting to take youth issues seriously, that we can now start even having, in the first place, that Youth Connect in the first place. We are now talking about its execution, which to me is a step in the right direction. That I may not necessarily agree with the execution plan, because maybe the reason why the media doesn't have a headline is because they are not sure what exactly is being discussed at that Youth Connect, because that is where we are having a gap. The youth of this country are all aware that there is Youth Connect going on, but under what motive? What is our interest in it? What is it geared towards? There is quite a failure in terms of now bringing out the practicability of it, and also including the young stakeholders themselves to know. Most of the young people who are actually at the level of policy, at the level of understanding what needs to be done, I would dare say most of them have not been involved in the running of the Youth Connect. And some who have only been involved as delegates. So at the end of the day, yes, we are having a Youth Connect that is supposed to be centered around young people, but the young people are there at the center of the conversation. And then now just to answer your question in terms of the opportunities in Africa, and when I came in, there was a conversation about how the world is now a global village. But for as long as traveling across Africa continues to be more expensive than traveling to Dubai, then there will continue being a problem.
But we have to travel.
Yes, we have to travel, and that's why it has to be cheaper. Because if we have to have integration of Africa, if the young people of Africa must be able to work together, then their working environment must be made more seamless. Because today, it is easier for a young person in Kenya to work with another young person in Dubai and other countries out of Africa. It is more expensive to actually travel locally within Africa. And you look at even, and I appreciate what the president did when he talked about the issue of the visa, and said we can now be able to come to Kenya as African countries. But the question is, can we Kenyans also go to the others? Now that's where they start to become a problem. You go to most of the African countries and it's more difficult to penetrate immigration than it is to go outside Africa. So we have a policy problem within Africa ourselves. And then, so for young people of Africa to be able to move, governments of Africa must be able to work together in reality and not in PR, because most of the time African governments are working together when they have the African Union, then we have some declaration, we have a press conference that promises us a lot of good, but the reality is that very little actually happens. And also on the burden of digitization, I call it a burden because just because there is digitization, everyone now thinks young people of Africa must concentrate on that. Young people of Africa are in all sectors. They're in environment, they're in we cannot be able to push all young people into becoming content creators.
It's not about content creation. It's about the fact that we have the internet and all these innovations, all these discussions, all this caucusing can happen over the internet. And policies may take long because of the generational gap we're talking about. And we're talking about the possibilities that exist now before a change in policy. Because before we have a visa, we drop all visa requirements in Africa.
But that is happening. That is actually happening. I'm part of GENDEM, Generation Democracy, put together by International Republican Institute, where all the youth leaders in Africa are able to come together on a platform. So we are able to have those conversations. And what has always limited us now beyond the internet, because not everything can actually be done on the internet. So when it comes to some of those occasions that now you need to actually have physical meetups for you to actually deliberate on some things, it becomes very difficult. Because recently when I was in Nigeria for the Presidential Youth Mentorship Retreat, many of the young people in Africa would want to be part of that presidential mentorship retreat because it's quite a program that seeks to nurture the leadership potential of young people in Africa. But how many young people can really be able to be part of this program? How many can afford it? How many governments are willing to fund young people for them to take part in such kind of initiatives? So in as much as yes, I want to say that there is a lot that has gone on in terms of just using the digital platforms in terms of caucusing. But now, more needs to be done. It cannot only stop there. And most of the time, and the approach you're giving it is actually the right approach, but most of the time governments talk about digitization. They don't mean that. They mean that young people are all supposed to go and align as content creators and make money, and that is all we are supposed to be doing. Okay. Young people should be in governance, they're in leadership, they're in environment, and every other sector.
And now we talk about that discussion about the policies, because at what point do the youth come in? There's this issue that we call public participation in Kenya. It's a very interesting thing because we do not know even how much of this public participation is ever taken into account. But at what point or how else can the youth influence policy to actually suit them? Because if we leave it to the older generation, they have already a set way of how things were done, and they may be reluctant to see things change. Castro.
And now I think I'll start from where I'm left, because he has raised a very critical issue of the government, of course, even the society thinking that the young people can only be empowered through content creation and because we are looking at, whenever we are talking about young people, even the government, they're talking about talent. And that's why they're coming with the talenta hela, and this talenta hela is circulating around content creation and sorts. But we have another young people, a very large group of young people who are in business, who are in agriculture, who are in leadership. And of course, we also have expertise in securities and other areas that also need to be, of course, recognized. And of course, they need that hand of the government, the support of the government. And when we are coming to participate on how these young people can participate in policy making, they cannot participate in policy making when they are still outside these circles. Of course, they have to be brought inside. And by bringing them inside is by, let's say, we can be enlarging the youth quota, enlarging the youth quota in the political parties, enlarging the youth quotas in government institutions and agencies, that this young person idea is captured, and this young person idea, when it's captured, then it is followed up and it's implemented to its latter. Then that one, then every idea that every young person, the aspiration of young people, then it's captured in the national agenda, and then it is done to its realization. Then we can say that young people, of course, now they are contributing to any national agenda and nation building. When the ideas, these people, they are recognized, and of course their ideas are respected.
There's something I hear a lot, and it's as if the youth feel that they are owed, that this government needs to do something for us, this society needs to. The fact of the matter is that no one owes you anything.
Yeah, that's true. There's nobody who
yes. So when you sit back and say this government needs to formulate policies that are favorable to the youth, this government needs to increase the quota of the youth, this government, aren't we missing the point, Kimone?
I will say this, and I want to support what my friend has said. When it comes to government, it is for the government to put up the systems, but it is for the citizenry to come up with the policies, because remember, we elect members to represent, but when they go there, they represent themselves. One way of this public participation, because I'm involved in public participation, and when I was working in the Nyandarua County Assembly long ago, we used to do those public participation. One way that the youth can do and participate in formulating these policies is through petitions, both in the County Assembly and the National Assembly and the Senate. There's one friend of mine in Nakuru called Laban. Just the other day, he petitioned the Senate on how to nominate MCAs. And his petition was centered on a nominated MCA must come from that particular ward and must be a voter.
The ballot.
From that ward.
Yes.
Not get someone from my ward in central Daragwa and bring him in Nairobi. And that is in the second reading. I think will be debated in the next sitting of the Senate. Yeah. So public participation does not only mean that going where it is happening, but most youth do not even attend those public participation. They only go there to wait for the member of parliament or the governor to get some handouts. So if the youth can now start owning, they realize that we are getting old also. Because Kimone today may be 35, tomorrow I'll be 36. I'm getting older. How do I make my tomorrow, when I'm an older person, better? And also at the same time, make my son's life better in this nation? Petition the county assemblies for the policies that you need formulated for your own county. And also petition the National Assembly and the Senate on the matters national. So the youth can do so much because we have the gadgets to do the research. But most youths are reluctant, as you said. We only get into what my brother is saying, content creation. And when you see the content that is created, it's just funny. It is not even making any sense. Yeah. So the older generation have seen, all they are interested in, the youth, are funny jokes. So that is why even the members of parliament and senators are also making these TikTok things, and they cannot discuss what is being discussed in parliament. Yeah. They are also making funny jokes with the youth. So we need to do petitions. We petition our county assemblies, the National Assembly and the Senate. We petition on the matters we want having done. He has mentioned something very important. Some youth, like myself, I'm in agriculture. I was asking the government the other day, where are the extension officers? We need to be doing soil tests so that I can know what can I plant on my land. I should not be doing cabbages, yet my soil supports carrots. But the youths are there who can do, and we have so many agronomists who are youths, but they have no place to go. So it is for us, the youth, to take the mantle. As you said, it is on us to take it up.
Are we saying the quality of discussions even at the Youth Connect, not the kind of discussions we should be having, that issues around content generation are being given prominence over other issues?
I mean, to some extent, yes. But before I get to that, I think I would also like to say, as the issue of public participation is very crucial. There's even a bill that is being discussed. We've taken part of it. And as he says, public participation is not just going and sitting under a tree or a forum or rather a hotel. Public participation involves quite a lot of other processes. And this is why I appreciate our organization Weekend, what we do. We have tried to extend involving the youth when it comes to public participation, because for us we do memorandums to parliament, we do the physical public participation. So once we get out there, we have also started a program where we're now involving students in higher institutions, so that we don't have a generation where they come out of school and they don't know what to do about public participation. So we are involving them. And then because we are also talking about the digital area, the digitization, this is what should be actually discussed. And this is why I'm saying, to some extent, the quality of the discussions at the summit are not really at par. Because if we are talking about the digital area and something like public participation, we should now be looking into how can the youth now be involved in the digital space on making the governments accountable. How can we have a digital way of public participation for the youth? These are the discussions that we need to see happening. When they were talking, I was just looking at both the newspapers. There's actually nothing about the Youth Connect Summit except for the cartoon. So that should tell us something. It should actually ring a bell.
And on the cartoon, it is only the youth, the
youth. Which youth is there?
Even the photos are not for you.
There's no content. So this is really actually a wake-up call for all of us.
Yes, Mandala.
I think, Ken, in the first place, I want to tell you that, you said the youth feel like someone owes them. It's true, someone really owes them. Yeah. And it's not a wrong feeling. To start with, this government came into office on the backs of young people. Two, the youth of this country voted. They participate in elections. So it's true, it's right for them to feel like they are owed by this government.
Can they claim that promise?
It's not wrong. They should. Yeah, it's not wrong. For most of the time when the youth need anything, they are boxed into feeling like they are doing the wrong thing, to just feel like they want to be part and parcel of the conversation. But you see, again, when you look at just the way the cartoon is there, and I said maybe part of the problem, the way I would not want to rush into blaming the media, is because maybe the media has not seen exactly what needs to be covered about the Youth Connect. Yeah. Because what exactly is the agenda? Because you can see, even Ken, on this panel, you are Fred. I don't know why I keep calling you Ken every time. I think if I was Raila right now, I would have changed you.
I understand.
So sometimes it is just about the reality that we must be able to start moving away from thinking youth issues are about activities.
Yes.
Most of the time when we want to engage the young people, we engage them in activities. Put them somewhere, let them have a conference, have something huge, call it a youth festival. Those are activities. There are things you do this year, then you do edition 2 next year. You know, it's like plays. So we don't have things that have longevity and have policy that can be able to really affect the lives of the young people. And sometimes, as my brother put it, I would really also agree to some point, that sometimes also the young people do not really understand what they are actually supposed to be doing. And so we are able to fall victim of those activities. So we feel like we have really been involved when we are involved in activities. Political parties, and I belong to the political parties sphere, you realize when political parties want to do member recruitment drives, suddenly young people are now required to go on tracks, to shout, to sing. And that is called participation of young people in politics. I do not really agree with that. And so we have quite a disconnect. And sometimes the issues are also far-reaching because of the age gap. Because we're saying youth is between 18 to 35. Now, the problems of these people between 18 to 21 might not necessarily be the same ones of 21 to 27, and not necessarily the same ones from 27 to 35. And that's why, for me, part of what I asked myself is, why is it that when we have a youth summit and a youth conversation, we think the first thing we should do, we should deal with is dress code? And you hold youth conversations here many times, and you are having a panel of young people here. They're not necessarily in cap and t-shirt. But most of the time we think that is what defines a young person. We think the young person is defined by such kind of things. Not to say those things are bad, but just to say that these young people have spheres and we must be able to look at them in a cross-cutting way. And sometimes we have the young person who has quite an experience, to understand what is needed. So this is the person who should be involved. That's what I'm saying, talking about the stakeholders. When we're having this youth connect, are we having people in agriculture, in whatever, who can now guide the ones who are now coming up to take the right path, instead of just involving young people in activities and concerts? Because I saw a lot of concerts.
And you've raised a very interesting issue about the fashion, and because it communicates a statement. That you see the leadership when they're showing up for the youth summit, they are dressed down, they're putting on some interesting attire. Does it speak to the lack of seriousness, or let me not say it that way, does it speak to the kind of understanding they have of the youth? That when you talk matters youth, is just yo-yo. You need to dress down, and, you're in sweatpants and tracksuits and stuff like that.
Shades.
That the conversation around the youth is never that serious. It's never heavy conversation.
You see, for one to, of course, to realize with the youth, of course, you have to be like them. And so many people now who are in that, maybe in the conference there, of course, there are much of them, they are content creators. Those people who are coming very fancy, and of course they dress very fancy, and the yo-yo thing. And you know, they are, of course, they are getting celebrated at iyo luku imeweza, luku
baridi.
Oh yeah, luku baridi. You know, you get it. So of course, that's what young people realize themselves with. So and when you see so many people, young people with masuti dio, sasa waheshimiwa, mheshimiwa, we chairman, you know, there's that debate around how young people they are dressing, and of course the dress code of the young people. So whatever any event and how the event is taken serious when you are coming with a dress code, because certain dress code, of course, it will communicate a certain issue. But here, when you're looking at yesterday, maybe it was maybe the conversation was around maybe sports and everything. Maybe we expect them to dress in such a manner. But when we are coming to have a conversation around maybe democracy, having maybe young people in business, young people maybe in other certain spheres of the economy, then a change of dress code, then of course it's required, and then that one also realizes the event.
I believe in Jamhuri, my brother has put out across a very pertinent position. When you look the youth through the lenses of dress codes, you miss it. Because I believe I attended the summit. I told you I'm a farmer. If I came in there with my gumboots and my apron and gumboots littered with manure, I wouldn't be allowed even close to the gate. But someone in there, even the president today, ate. Someone in prison will eat. Someone in hospital will eat. So if we can only focus on the divergency of where youth are then we will get it right. There are those who are in sport and in content creation and all. That is why we are focusing on it, because there is a lot of drama and concerts at the summit. But when we look at the youth, if we really want to connect with them, the government connects with them and we connect with the government, is to realize my sister is in fashion design. My brother here is in security. Kimona is in farming. My brother could be in aeronauticals. What are you bringing on board? I do not understand anything, maybe fashion. I do not understand anything security, but I need it at my home. So the way we say that the youth need to connect is bring up the ideas. What does Indimuli do? When we are coming here, can I be able to host such a show? I may not, he can teach me. When it comes to farming, I can teach you something. This is where the connect comes in. But when the politicians think that the only involvement of our youth is during campaigns, throwing stones or demonstrations, then we are getting it wrong. And that is why the youth think, hey, if I go and do that, I'll get money. Because at the end of the day, I want food on my table. And we have forgotten one thing. The youth, especially between 23 all the way to 35, have young children. So they are looking for bread for the young kid. So they are not even so much focused on how to get the money, but will I get the money? So whatever you tell them to do, they will do it, but it is issue of policy.
Does it speak to a possible knowledge gap in terms of, because yes, across the continent, literacy levels, there's a huge disparity. But when it comes to understanding the issues that concern the youth, from our standpoint as Kenya, we do understand, at least we feel that we have a better understanding of things. Do you feel that probably, because if you say that the government looks at the youth and they see content, music, talanta, yes, and that's all they see. Where's the disconnect? Is it, where's the knowledge gap coming from? That even the highest office in the land just sees content creation and music and talent. Mundal.
I think, first of all, I don't think there is quite a knowledge gap per se, because the young people of this country, they know their problems. When you go to the streets and ask them, they will tell you what they would want. If you go and ask even the people at the bus station what they would hope to see in that Youth Connect, you'll be amazed at the number of ideas that you'll be able to have. Because, and I don't even think that the literacy level is actually low. The problem is perception, because perception has been shaped in a manner that young people are about activities and numbers and likes. So this show, discussing this agenda, might not necessarily make it as big as if we chose to discuss some other petty issue. Now that is where the gap comes in. And therefore it becomes very difficult for you even to blame the bigger offices when we as young people are ourselves shaping the wrong perception. Because when we are talking about the most serious of issues, when we're talking about agriculture and stuff, we don't want to give it the prominence that it deserves. So if we don't give it the prominence that it deserves, that is what we will be taken to be about. Now, when you go to the inboxes of many of the young people in leadership, in agriculture, you will find so many young people there struggling to ask them, how can I become this? How do I do this? How do I do that? But that young person who is doing that right thing has 100 young people struggling to get access to them. But when he communicates, he has visibility of about 2 likes and 3 views. But when you talk about another nonsensical issue, it gets a lot of prominence. So then it is, we cannot then blame people for perceiving us in a certain way, because we shape the perception ourselves. That is why we are we are about dress code, we are about activities, we are about concerts. Not to say those things are bad, but just to say we must be able to ensure that we are not limited to that. Because the youth conversation is about, you see, when you talk about the matter of women and gender and the gender issue, you see the prominence that it has taken. It has pushed itself all the way to the Constitution because of how the conversation was taken. It stopped just being about them being in different types of clothes than men. It came into being about the content, what they can offer and that. So as young people of this country, we must be able to take the mantle ourselves. We must not be able to really rush into blaming anyone, but let us be able to shape the right perception. Let us be able to push and ensure that the right things that we so dearly need are given the prominence that it deserves. Otherwise, the perception about young people will continue being the same. That's why today there is a presidential advisor on women affairs, but I've always argued, why isn't there a presidential advisor on youth affairs? And part of the problem, if you ask me, is because young people, yes, the youth conversation needs to move on, but we must stop thinking that youth is a qualification. Being a young person is not a qualification for anything. If anything, since independence, everyone who made change in this country was actually a youth. When you look at the Tom Mboyas, even the Raila Odingas, the William Rutos, when they were actually youth. The difference between us and them is that it was not called a youth conversation. Now we have the advantage that now we can have a push of something called, but the problem is we have also been fixated to think being youth is a qualification. So we are now pushing the youth conversation so seriously.
Some sense of entitlement also.
We are pushing it so seriously than we are pushing our own qualification. And our own skills.
And I may not fail to add on to that and say that the people that we elect are representatives. The biggest problem and challenge we have with them is that when you get to office and you're elected, you think that you know it all. That is why when we say that if you go to the street, you may get ideas, they do not want to do that. They think that when I get to parliament, I'm the governor, I'm the senator, I'm the women rep.
I know.
Whatever I say is what you're supposed, it is the agenda of the people. You are just a representative. You should go to parliament and represent what we sent you. But they don't come back there. But I always tell the youth, the biggest challenge that we have with the youth is we listen to everyone. Personally, I tell people, do not listen to wisdom from everyone who has gray hair. Even fools grow old.
True. Let's take a look at some of the themes. There were 7 themes that informed the discussions at the Youth Connect Africa Summit 2023. The first one, sustainable green livelihoods, climate adaptation and resilience, matters climate change, climate adaptation, climate action. Second theme, the renaissance of the African dream, which I found and we touched on earlier on. We might come back to that. The third one was leveraging innovation and digital era. We've discussed that as well. The fourth one, sustainable peace, security and reconciliation. These are very serious discussions.
Yes.
Fifth, enterprise development, the future of Africa's borderless commerce. Vulnerabilities around mental, sexual and reproductive health. Some of these things are very key, yet probably rarely given ample time. And lastly, reimagining business for Africa's creative industry, sports and culture. And we've just talked about. But do you feel that probably there's some things that were missing out, Nelly? Or do you feel there's a discussion that should have been had that is not represented among the 7 themes?
Yeah, youth in leadership, where is it? If we are talking of youth taking us to the next level, where is the discussion about the youths taking up the leadership spaces? Where is the discussion where we are able to see, as much as we are talking about the youths are blaming the older generation, where are the discussions where we can now say that, okay, so now we are moving from the complaints and blame game to now an era where we have generational mentorship. That gap that we've always talked about mentorship. Where are they? Where are the discussions that we should be hearing about that, yes, we are the older generation, as the cartoon says, that they're asking us to take up these leadership spaces. But while they're asking us, where are they to hold our hands? Where are they to listen to us? As he talks of, I would like to say that a country is as good as the institutions it erects and the kind of leadership it bequeaths itself. So we start from there. The kind of people we take to parliament, we expect them to represent our issues, but they're busy dancing to the tune of the executive. We've seen scenarios where you know you're a representative of the people, but you go to parliament, sign in, then you walk out. That is like you are insulting the people who sent you there. So it also needs to have the discussion of where are we coming in as leaders of this country who, it's like we lack the goodwill from our leaders. Because I want to believe once we have leaders or representatives of the people with the interest of the people at heart, leaders who have goodwill for the nation, leaders who are willing to listen, leaders who are aware of the priority programs and priority initiatives for the country, then we can be able to talk about something different. While we are talking about sports as a theme in the Youth Connect Summit, why are we not seeing, just recently we saw the performance by the Harambee Junior Stars and the Starlets. Where are they in the Youth Connect? How are they being celebrated? How are the government, or how is the government supporting the junior football leagues that are coming up? We are not seeing such kind of discussions in the summit. So it needs to change.
And Castro, what would you say among the 7 has stood out for you, that this is a proper discussion that we should actually canvass beyond the summit? It could be anything.
Yeah, I agree that I have been captured. Of course, it has been captured, issue of the security, peace, and reconciliation. Because if you look at young people, it's young people that are much captured when it's come to violence and extremism. And within Africa, we are looking at states that have, of course, been able to experience extremism and fighting guns. And it's these young people, we haven't seen these men with gray hair carrying guns and of course, participating in violence and bombing. But when we say we involve young people in peace, security, and peace building, and making young people understand the security matters and how important state security, the security issues is important to a state, then we are able to build up a young generation, youth and youthful generations that, of course, they know the importance of the security and the peace and how that peaceful environment contributes to our economy. So if we have an African that is out of, or it's out of extremism, it's out of terrorism, because if you're the majority and the number of people that are, of course, described as terrorists, they are young people, and if even those who have been arrested, and of course, if you look at their profile, these are people, their ages, of course, match that of a youth, and then we can be able to build up an African that is out of extremism, and we can build up an African that is out of threats, insecurity threats, and then we are driving an African or a state that is very peaceful, and then we bring young people into this reconciliation table, like the negotiations that are ongoing in a states. Of course, we are looking like that of Ethiopia and Sudan. Then we need those youth in those states to be at the center of building that reconciliation and building a one nation, because a country's dream or a state's dream will be realized when also young people, they are willing to participate in the nation building, and they are willing now to participate and contribute to the dream of our country.
Okay, because we are running out of time, we have another interview with the British High Commissioner to Kenya, His Excellency Neil Wigan. I'll give you an opportunity to give your parting shot in about 20 seconds or less. Let's start with you, Bwana Kimone.
Thank you so much. What was captured in one of those main agendas, in a nutshell, was the mental wellness. Personally, I am involved in it, and especially I run a company together with my friend called Room 504, where we're looking at the mental space, the mental wellness, especially of the man, because the man mental space has been, the voice has been shut. Because when we look at, unless we are all mentally healthy, both girl and boy, both man and woman, then we cannot run the agendas of this nation. So what I think and what I believe should be taken even after the summit is the mental well-being of the entire nation, so that we can be able to have a sane nation.
Thank you so much. Mondalo, briefly.
First of all, I think, let me just comment on the subjects that you mentioned. I think there were 7, and those are amazing topics. That is what we hope to find. But one thing I can tell you in Dimuli is that I have been in this youth space and youth conferences for a while, and you'll be amazed when you look at the proposals that created the conference. But then come down and now look at the conference itself, and then there will be a big disparity. So what you read is the proposal to the Youth Connect. Amazing stuff. African Renaissance, amazing stuff. But who is involved? I look yesterday when I got a call to come to this panel, I said, maybe there's something I don't know about the Youth Connect that is happening. So I did a quick run through and said, go to Google, go to YouTube, and write Youth Connect 2023. Okay. There is nothing apart from arrivals. Whoever arrives at the Youth Connect, or another person arrives, Kenyans urged to dress down. Yeah. There is nothing about those topics that comes out. So there must be practicality. We must start looking at young people's issues with more practical eyes than just the lens of the proposals to attract funding and nothing beyond.
And I'm being rushed out of studio, unfortunately, so we'll have to do without your parting shot today.
Exactly.
But I have to go through this editorial comment. This week, Kenya turns 60. Indeed, a pivotal moment for deep reflection on our nation's values and the pervasive issue of corruption that has plagued our governance and society. 6 decades on, we are staring at the monster of institutionalized corruption that has seeped into every facet of Kenyan life, eroding trust, hampering progress, and stifling development. Now, according to EACC CEO Twalib Mbarak, corruption is not merely a stain on Kenya's history. It surpasses even the scars left by past events like the tragic post-election violence of 2008. It stands as a barrier to progress that exceeds even the persistent challenges of illiteracy, hunger, and disease that we continue to suffer. Corruption has penetrated vital sectors like education, where fraudulent academic qualifications and exam malpractices prevail. It has corroded the foundations of meritocracy, fostering an environment where dishonesty thrives over hard work and integrity. EACC acknowledges that corruption has infiltrated even sacred institutions like the church, a reflection of the extent of the moral decay. As the scourge of corruption continues to destroy the depths of our nation's soul, other nations continue to advance and flourish. We are meanwhile left grappling with the fallout of a systemic issue that drains resources, hampers growth, and impedes the realization of our nation's full potential. It is time for a collective soul searching and a commitment to rebuilding a moral fabric that has been torn by greed and ethical decay.